Episode 43 is the last of 2021, and what a year it's been for us all. Thanks to all my guests and listeners, and I'm really looking forward to giving you some more podcast goodness in 2022. In this episode, I chat with Raaj Govintharajah, founder and CEO of The Martec. The Martec's an AI-powered employee-generated content platform. Employee-generated content has picked up in popularity with employers, especially since the COVID-19 outbreak in 2020. So I just had to chat with Raaj to help make you an EGC Pro in 2022. How can organizations overcome the challenges of creating employee-generated content? What role does employee-generated content software play in the employer marketing tech stack? And why is it so important to take an editorial approach to content strategy and production? We cover this and more in this episode. Let's get on with the chat. Hi Raj, how you doing?
Yeah, good, Chris. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. As always, I tend to be in and around London for my podcast. Where are you? What part of the world are you at the moment?
Sunny Sydney. Well, dubiously sunny. It's not as sunny as it's claimed to be recently.
Good stuff. Well, thanks for taking the time out, and it's a late one for you, and so really appreciate it. I thought it'd be great to have a chat because I know about you guys, know about the Martec, and know about the employer brand Wagon. I've signed up to your various newsletters and seen you guys on LinkedIn. We've had a few chats, and I thought it's definitely a good opportunity to talk about employer generated content and tech. And I think particularly in the context of, I talk about a lot on the podcast about, I've mentioned regularly about kind of companies behaving like editorial teams, creating content that's kind of tapping into the pulse of what the audience wants, but also of what their employees are doing. And, their employees have not only stories, but they have experiences, but also they have opinion and advice, which is can all be brought under the umbrella of content marketing. So I suppose it was kind of great to chat with you about how that's about employee generated content and how we use tech to do that. So let's start off with just a bit of an intro to yourself and your company.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no worries at all. So about myself, it's essentially my third business. The first one was 15 years ago. Started an email marketing software vendor that we grew to fabulous business. We grew to 3 different countries. Sold it early doors. I should have kept it. Every time now, we were starting around the same time as MailChimp, and just every time I hear about MailChimp now, but it was the days where it was very much the early days of both SaaS, software as a service.
Okay, yeah.
People were still being like, "Hey, we'll put this software into your environment." And then the second bit of it was still very early days of digital marketing. Like we were talking to CMOs, chief marketing officers, on like, we spend on TV and the Mad Men era, and then that they'd be like, yeah, we spend a little bit on digital. Yeah, I mean fax marketing. We do some faxes.
Oh my God!
We some catalogs. I was like, you're the largest retailer, one of the largest retailers in the world. You send catalogs. They're like, yeah, email. We can save some money on catalogs. I was like, so it was really, really early days. So that was that business, and that grew, and we sold it. And it was probably my first taste of kind of VC, the up and down side of it. We sold it, and then the second time around, I started a business in recruitment services, still going, and essentially allowed us to become our own VC. We took the profits and bootstrapped and took the profits from it and kind of started tech companies. The first couple didn't fly, and the third one, the Martec's gone great guns. So we're about 4.5 years old now. We've got first couple of years we built the technology and built also the audience. So kind of the community, and took the editorial approach, which we'll talk about a bit more. And then in the last year, we've really put the foot to the pedal. We've got kind of critical mass. And the last year, we've opened up offices in Vietnam, Australia, UK, US. We've got users in over 20 different countries. We've got a business that still hasn't raised outside capital, which I'm like super grateful for. That we still can continue this run, and I think we'll end up in just controlling our destination, just being we're now at a really decent sized business. So, and we deal with, at the core of it, we're about employee generated content. We provide platforms, an all-in-one EGC platform. We targeted enterprise organizations, over 1,000 employees, and our sweet spots, our primary persona is employer branding.
Okay, yeah, nice. And what's your kind of? I mean, your tech is so close to the employee generated EGC, landscape. What's your view on the current state of EGC?
Yeah, sure. I think it's fragmented. I think if you take a step back, people are trying to do employee generated content in different areas. They've got some people are using freelancers, some people are using agencies, some people are trying to do themselves, some people are trying to work with their marketing teams, some people are trying to use some tech, whether it's a video platform, whether it's some sort of written. And I think in any sort of industry with a level of fragmentation like that, and it's so early on, there's two parts. I think there's one part which is tempting to be a bit of a land grab, where it's like an arms race. You're just trying to win customers as soon as possible. And I think the other one is, and I think this is where I think we're going down, and I hope this is where the industry ends up. It's, you take a step back and you go, what are the real problems the customer's facing? Not just about creating employee generated content, but what are they trying to do with that content? How are they trying to achieve results? How are they trying to build up the value of employer branding in the organization? How are they trying to build employer branding? How are they trying to get a seat at the table? How are they trying to articulate the value of what employer branding can do, and where does EGC fit in? And I think the people who do that well will end up winning. Will end up winning the category. But I also think they'll end up building real loyalty with customers. They would have really helped customers, not just with business results, but with their personal careers.
Yeah, and what do you? I mean, she talked to you and the team talked to a lot of organisations that use employee generated content, and so what kind of typically what do you see as being kind of the success of employee generated content? Why do organizations do it, and why is there so much talk about it?
Yeah, sure. I think there's a fundamental acceptance that you trust people like yourself more than you trust organizations. I think that we understand that as consumers when we're being marketed to, that you trust stuff that your mate tells you, or stuff that then over a brand that says, pushes it in front of you. So I think there's that fundamental acceptance that that's there. And I think you couple that with some of the recent workforce structural changes, where people are remote working, they're not in the office, they're having blended workforces. So it's like, how do you communicate effectively to not just the external market, but to your own internal workforce? And then how do you do that in a trustworthy, credible way? So I think those two kind of market shifts have caused a need for employee generated content to be a sensible solution for that. So yeah, I think was that your question around, hey, what's driving the need for employee generated content, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, it's suppose really kind of my thinking is around kind of also what success do you see organizations having in it, because
Sure.
they will only continue it if it's worth, if they see some sort of return, and it's not necessarily bottom line return, but they see there's some sort of uptake and interest, and results that are being driven from rolling out employee generated content in your marketing.
Yeah. I think there's three levels of where people see returns of it. I think the first one is simply the fact that, hey, there's a level of expectation that you do storytelling if you're in employer branding or you're trying to support the recruitment team. So I think the first is literally like to keep your job in that area. Hey, are you communicating enough content out there? Which is not necessarily an easy thing to do by and of itself. So, so I think that's the first bit, which is just like literally the volume of stories. And then I think as you get a bit more sophisticated, you get to, okay, well, what are we getting from the content we're creating? So that then leads to organizations who go, hey, are we being able to drive more traffic to our website? And if we drive more traffic to our website, is there a proxy of, hey, if we drive X amount of traffic to our website, we know it converts at Y percentage rate, which leads to X amount of applicants. And does that, for example, become a better return than maybe job board advertising? Or is there like content to fuel our LinkedIn campaigns, our sponsored ads, which then give us a better return if we create the right content in front of the right audiences? Is there content that fuels our employee referrals? I think there's just content with a purpose. I think it's like, hey, and the way we think about it is, hey, it's like water and, you know, the pipes. You're kind of going, hey, you've invested in a whole bunch of sunk costs, which are all these channels, whether they're everything from Glassdoor to LinkedIn to all the rest of it. You need water. You need water to push through that. It's relevant for all of those investments. And that tends to be a bit more of a smarter, more nuanced marketing conversation. And then I think the final bit around how people get return is, okay, well, I've got some of this already in place, but what I really want to drive is a greater return on that, or find new audience groups that I can't tap into with, you know, LinkedIn or whatever it is. And that comes from employee advocacy. You know, how do I tap into my own people's network? You know, how do I create content and get them to share it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think actually, it's really interesting you say that, because I think, you know, the advocacy part is really important, and you're right. It's this kind of thing about not wanting the message to kind of get in the way of the content. It's, you know, there's only so many times you can say you're a great organization to work for, or employer of choice, or there's how many taglines or, you know, headlines that there are out there that will do that. It's ultimately, my view is, the employer brand is the experience of your employees. You know, so they are the ones that have to be able to share that experience. You know, not only the stories, but also the opinion, and also their experience and their advice. I think that, along with stories, and stories typically is talked about in terms of employer branding content, it's the story that we have to tell, you know, and the stories that our employees have to tell, I think. But that opinion and advice and experience is really, really important. And when you use employees to talk about what they know about, I think you kind of supercharge your advocacy, because they're not just being used as a vessel to pass on a message and use their free reach, you know, because often that is advocacy is kind of used in that way, or talked about in that way, is that, you know, your employees can give you the reach that you cannot get necessarily on your channels directly, and there's very little, if not no cost to that, but by involving your employees in that content, and I suppose this takes us to the kind of the editorial piece, you know, is sourcing the right people, the right stories, getting the right opinion, you know, getting the right advice, creating content that other people are going to learn from, you know, rather than just what is the sell of the organization, I think is really important. But of course, that has to be managed, doesn't it? And I know from experience, having over the years, having to do things over email, you know, send you the files too big, send over WeTransfer, you know, send over WhatsApp, you know, to kind of try and manage that, is, if you're doing it manually, is a big job. So obviously tech has a role to play, and that is a big reason why why you've funded yourselves as a business to get into this space. So, before we kind of go into a bit more about what you guys do, kind of what is your view about the kind of tech space? I mean, you talked about a bit of a land grab and stuff. So, in terms of tech space and EGC, kind of what's your view on what that looks at the moment?
Yeah, I think a lot of it's fundamentally done poorly. I think that's where it's going with it, with the land grab. I think you can, in land grabs, you can often make money where you don't really focus on the long-term customer's interests. But, I think in terms of how I think content should be done, I think it comes from the same principle of, as a consumer, or just as not even a consumer, just as an individual, what kind of content really resonates? And I think if you think about it that way, we as consumers want to be educated, we want to be entertained, we want to have insights. If you think about the people we hang around with and the tribes that we hang around with, it's because we have a laugh with them. We might think we've got some stuff in common with them. I think some of them we might respect what they know, and there might be some really interesting conversations with them. And I think if you take that perspective, that is how we think EGC should be done. And that just happens to be the way newsrooms are done. They're driven off that principle, right? Because they're in the world of doing that with their audience. So it's, and I think if you think of it that way, it's none of that really, like if you had a mate who all they did was talk about how great they were and what they were doing and why it was so great, you just tune out after a while. You'd be like, mate,
stop banging on about yourself.
Just stop it, mate. Like, geez, what is this? And I think there's a lot of parallels with organizations who just don't get that, right? It's like, hey, you don't want to be that mate who's no one wants to talk to at a party, or just slowly dwindles away in that WhatsApp group, So you want to be that one that gets invited to the party, gets and I think if we've taken on that premise, and if you take that on, you go, okay, well, it's a question of, from a tech point of view, part of it's making things more efficient. How do I, do this on scale, make it more efficient, But part of it's just, you got to create tech that actually allows you to educate, entertain, draw insights, and that's hard. That's the hard bit that our tech does. So, to draw insights, you need to, for example, know what's trending with the audiences that you want to talk to. Where do they hang out? What's interesting to them? You need to know what's trending with your own people in terms of the content and how it represents your brand. That's hard. That's algorithms. That's hard. That's data. That's a data asset that you're building there. You need to, if you want to entertain them, and you need to be able to find the people who, if you want to draw insights, you want to create insights and funnel that into the market, you need to find people who have insights in your business. You need to find the tribe leaders. You need to find the advocates. It's not just a question of, hey, that person's got a lot of LinkedIn reach. How do you find the people who are people who can take an opinion on something and then give them a chance to have an opinion on something? All of that combination. And then how do you fundamentally get people who are super busy? How do you get people to come to you? How do you get content to come to you? How do you make it consistent? How do you be able to create like a loop of all of this stuff? There's some hard problems. There's some really hard problems that aren't so black and white in software. Like, hey, here's a process that's done manually. Let's just put some software to make it more efficient. And I think that's why the industry shied away from today, trying to build that kind of EGC, whether like in our platform, we can do it through video, written, all types of content. I don't think that's the smart things. I think the industry is talking too much about, hey, we can do some video content or written content or this, that. I don't really care what kind of asset type you do. And I don't really care if you can talk about you. What I want you to help me to solve is, how do I build this kind of newsroom on scale? How do I do these things that this newsroom does? And they're complex problems with complex tech that you have to make look simple.
Definitely. And it's like, you kind of see it, don't you, in I suppose, in other sectors and industries where you see there are certain things, pieces of software that they're quite narrow, and there's, as a user, you're kind of using multiple platforms to try and tie it all together. And either you're a small team and you need, you can really do a tech to make your job that much easier, or you're a bigger team, but you've got that scale because you're a global organization that you just to try and do it any other way than use kind of centralized tech is going to be as challenging if you're trying to do a smaller company, all by yourself or with a smaller team. So I think you're absolutely right. And I love what you say about the insights piece, literally kind of drawing on the pulse of what your audience would be interested in. In fact, I think when I was talking to James Ellis on episode 40, we talked about narcissistic brands and
Sure.
how they like to talk about themselves. And of course, that's going to happen if you're not listening to really what people are going to be interested in and have that editorial hat on you. Then you are going to be just coming up with. There's only so many times you can say a few key messages about yourselves as an organization. So yeah, I think I think it's great to see that you guys have introduced this tech that's actually about starting with drawing on insights, but then also building those tribes of people within an organization to help, I suppose, kind of supercharge that interest in gathering and scaling up that content. So let's talk a bit more about that then, about what the Martec does, what your software does.
Yeah, sure. At the core of it, we're AI-powered employee-generated content, and the core value prop that we support is we help an organization create and distribute employee-generated content, which is I view as the first half of how we built the business, which kind of scaled us up to a truckload of really global, well-recognized brands. And the second half, which we've been tackling for the last year, is not just to create and distribute EGC, but then to your whole organization that loves it. The whole and the love is what's tricky, because create and distribute you can push. Whole and love means you need to pull people through.
Yeah.
You can't. And when most people talk about employee generated content, they talk about, they're like, you know what? I'm in a business that's 50,000 people. And you go, cool. How many people are doing employee generated content? They go, it's awesome. We have like 20 pieces a month. You're like, okay, well, how many people? They're like 20. So you're a 20 person, you got 20 people doing employee generated content, and you're 50,000 people.
Yeah.
It's like, that can't be like something that people really whole and love, like, which also means, unfortunately, for employee branding practitioners, you're perceived in this narrow box of EVP or employer branding. You may be helping like talent acquisition, but you're certainly not positioned as, hey, I'm also playing a large role in retention and HR, and I'm also playing a large role in how the business is positioned from what we're trying to do as an organization, how it's driving the C-level objectives. You can't just be like, we work with 20 people in a 50,000 person organization and be like, we're having a material impact. We need a seat in the table. Like,
it's true. Yeah, it's true. Like 20 out of say 50,000 wouldn't be a great return on, wouldn't be valid data, would it, in a survey?
No, you'd be like, no, that is non-statistical. Yeah. And that's where I think people are like, it's almost like the bar set too low in that, which is, hey, we're happy if we just create 10, 20 pieces a month, dish some bunch of videos, I think, and I know why, because it's hard. It's hard to go, how do we get 10% of the workforce? How do we get 5,000 people who are loving this, who are coming to us, who want to do this, who are putting up their hand, who are saying, this is what the type of content that represents our brand. This is the type of content that would hire developers. This is the type of content that would hire whatever. To answer that question is goddamn hard.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
Like, and it's like, that's the one that I think we're cracking right now. And I think we're getting some amazing results. The one that's a bit easier is to go, let's create some content and distribute it. I'm not saying it's super easy, but there's a lot of people who think, wow, it is amazing. We've created a lot of videos and we've distributed it. And I'm saying we can create videos from our platform, so I'm not backing it out, but I don't think that's the end game of just creating and putting it out there. I think the end game is, how do we get results that has a material impact in our organization?
Yeah, and yeah, absolutely. There's that, the really important role of working with internal comms, employee comms, whatever you want to call it, wherever the different teams are, is making sure that it is very much inward facing, and it's using it to actually, involve and and motivate your people. But yeah, you're right. It's extremely it's extremely challenging, and there's you've got, I think, with what you're talking about, it's great. You've got this opportunity to kind of use social listening, have a social listening element, which is about drawing upon what people in particular sectors like, say, tech or in marketing or healthcare are talking about. Then there's that thing about giving an ability for these kind of tribe leaders to get onto the platform, supply their content, but also get other people to supply content as well. And you're hoping there's some sort of multiplier effect there, or dare I say it, kind of semi-viral. No, I don't like using that word, because anything I can think of at the moment. Need another cup of coffee, I think. But it's I think there's that tribe element, which is great, because if you've got the software along with that thing of taking say those 20 people who are actually your tribe leaders,
and then
that
magnify
then turns into 100, 150, 200, 300, 500.
And some of the stuff that I'm really excited about that's coming down the pipeline is, we're talking about what we call like a global EGC portfolio, where we crowdsource all the best employee generated content down in the world. But for an organization, instead of just saying to some of their people, hey, what kind of content we should do, or their tribe leaders, or even just, this is the kind of topics we should talk about, they actually just, because not like most people aren't content marketers. If you give them like, hey, what kind of topics, this is trending, they'll be like, yeah, I guess so. Yeah, maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll do D&I. Maybe I'll do this. But everyone can have an opinion on what they think visually is right. Yeah. So you put that in front of them, and they're like, hey, I love that. That should be there. That's like a Pinterest style collaboration board that goes through to the tribes, and they go, hey, this is what this tribe stands for, and this is there and there. And then you're collaborating, organize. I love the concept of that, then feeding the types of content you should create.
Yeah, lovely. And it's ultimately then what happens is when that content is then being produced within the platform, then the end result is basically you've got a whole gold mine of content that then can be taken from the platform and then published on
whatever channels you want.
And you've got the editorial element of things as well. So let's talk a bit more about that. And obviously, we talked about editorial in a broader sense, but you also have that support in terms of writing as well, don't you? And actual content creation.
So we have like editorial writing or video editing. Like ultimately, I think if you look at our customers, they're lean. They're relatively lean. So they're lean in terms of resources for themselves, and they often end up leaning on marketing, and marketing got a whole bunch of other custom marketing to do, or market facing activities. So it's just not easy. It's a fight for resources. So we appreciate that. And what we've done is we started off by just building a panel of vetted like content creators, whether they're written or video, but mainly a lot on written, that are often bilingual, or they, I used to be in a certain background domain, they now become a writer. So we've done that, and you can just on platform click for support as in when you need it. And we're moving to that to become a marketplace.
Nice.
So you literally see it. You can see the different people, like literally like a Fiverr, but it's vetted for EB content.
Lovely. So actually, then that means that, for example, if you've got something where you've had some, people answer the same 5 questions, question answer, you might want that to be, written up into an article, or if someone's maybe kind of done a bit of a starting point in terms of something which is, very sector specific, but it needs refining, then you've got that editorial support to do that, which is something that can be very difficult for teams to get hold of. I know that kind of from my experience, I've even done it myself sometimes, depending on the scale of the project, but I've also, called upon people I just know kind of in my network to do that. So to have that connected to the platform as well is fantastic. So let's finish off with just talking about who do you think, kind of, when you think about your platform and you think about a client or clients that use it, what puts a big smile on your face in terms of going, yeah, our platform helped do that, for that client?
I think the biggest one is when we hear feedback, which is, hey, you help me build up the value of EB, like I put this on my resume. Like, for example, we work with Siemens all around the world in different areas, and she's like, thank you for, like, we won these awards. I put it on my CV. Like, I talk a lot about, hey, making our customers heroes. Getting them to personally put them on stage, having them put stuff after working with us, like they put stuff on their resume. When I get feedback like that, I'm like, that's great. Like, that is great. It's like, obviously we're all trying to get business results, ROI and all the rest of it, but you also got to get close enough to a customer where they say that to you, which is the nice thing about it. Like, there's a level of intimacy of that relationship, which makes me happy on two fronts. One, that we are actually that close with our customer. And two, that our customer success team and our product actually delivers that. There's plenty of software I've bought and I've used where I'm like, either I don't want that with my vendor, or it just doesn't deliver that. Like, I've never heard of I use Salesforce for my CRM. I've never, ever thought, Salesforce, this is going to get me my next job. This is going to...
Yeah. Well, it's ultimately their job is to well, it's our job to help them do their job. And so it's great. It's great to hear when you have clients who come back to you saying thank you for playing a part in this. And if they succeed, then obviously we succeed as well, don't we? So and so you mentioned Siemens. Which other companies do you think would be worth dropping in links to their content in the episode description?
Yeah. So we've got a bucket of them. We've got in Westpac, Telstra, Siemens, EY, Philips, like just like 100 odd teams there that I think are just great.
Nice.
And happy to circle around some of like portfolio stuff post that, which is like the best content. And that portfolio that we're building, we're crowdsourcing from our community. It's not just, it's 50% or 40% stuff we're doing, but it's 50% like stuff that is out there that's just great. So it doesn't have to even be our clients necessarily that are doing it. I'm not saying all our clients are just doing the best stuff, but I love, for example, some of the stuff that Amazon are doing that we also ironically just look at that and go, we just want to democratize that. So one of the things Amazon doing that I love is a new person starts and goes, they want to capture a moment. So in one of the regions in Amazon, they were, selling out film crews when people were just starting. And I was like, just like opens up the laptop. And I was like, that's an amazing idea. Can anyone really afford to do that part from Amazon in that region? Probably not. You're not going to send a film crew to new starters in. Can you have an app that allows you to, the moment a new starter starts, triggers off, hey, this person started from the HRS system, triggers off in our video app a bunch of questions that are based on, hey, thank you for coming, and then your next milestone at 3 months, and then builds a series for you. What a nice way to capture the moments. So, we stole that from Amazon. We were like, great idea. We just need to democratize it so someone doesn't have to pay $10,000 per person per moment. So I think there's a bunch of stuff like that that's in the portfolio. And I again, it comes down to, I just think the industry is like relatively fragmented. People just don't know about this, right?
Mm. Yeah, you're right. And also, I think there's the assumption that it's, and this is kind of, I think, the issue is I think the software providers are to blame. Certainly, like the way they were, say, 5-10 years ago, is that it's perceived as it's expensive. It's really expensive, and I just feel that that there's a lot more flexibility in how you pay for software these days. And with you guys, there's definitely that flexibility. So, the barrier to entry is low. It certainly is low enough to pilot something, and then to scale it up if you feel it's going to work. There's actually, you've got some customer success stories on your website. So what I'll do is I'll drop the link into that, which is on themartec.com. Then anyone listening can go and take a look at that. And if anyone's got any questions kind of following this, just I'll be putting this on LinkedIn. So when I post it, just feel free to comment and tag me and Raj in it. But yeah, thanks for your time. It's getting late for you over in Sydney, but really appreciate it. Thank you, and you have a good day.
Yeah, you too.
What's left of it.
Thanks for listening, and if you enjoyed what you heard, then please feel free to subscribe, and it would be awesome if you could leave a review as well. It really does help.